Okay, well, thanks for coming, everybody. This is really exciting for me to see. It's easy to think you're kind of alone in the perennial agriculture world, and then you kind of get with your community and you start realizing that you're not the only weirdo thinking about tree crops and berry bushes and fruit trees and, you know, feeding animals with perennials. So it's really encouraging to have you here. So thanks for coming out. It means a lot. So yeah, my name is Brian. I've been farming for, probably since 2010. My story kind of started back in college. I'm from the States. I grew up in Colorado. I did not grow up on a farm. I grew up in a suburb of Denver in Boulder, and you know, there's some environmental ethics thrown in there, and then I'm just, you know, traveling mountains and looking for another snowboard run to go down, and I found Western State College in Gunnison, and that's on the other side of the mountains from Boulder, and so it's a really cold place. I think it's like one of the shortest growing seasons in the lower 48, and so we got into agriculture there because everybody stopped doing it in that area, and so all the farmers markets were full of farmers from 2-3 hours away, and you know, digging into the history, it was pretty apparent that like there used to be farming there. It's just kind of got outsourced to the more productive areas, you know, and learning about that stuff, and then, you know, you're getting your college degree in environmental studies, and the weight of the world is slowly crushing you about how bad everything is, and you know, I kind of just felt like I didn't have control over any of it, and these issues were so big, and so agriculture, right? It checks all the boxes of environmental justice, social justice, you know, making a change, making the world a positive place, and then I could kind of take off the weighing hat. I didn't need to figure out how much of an impact I was having. It's like, you know, agriculture is something I would want to be doing if everything was good, and agriculture is something I need to be doing if everything's not so good. So, you know, the outcomes be damned. This is the right livelihood. This is the path I want to walk. And so I got into it. And so we started growing high altitude vegetables and going to farmers markets. That was super exciting, not super lucrative. It was cool during the college years because we were expanding community gardens, you know, getting money for our buddies to run them and to host events and spread awareness and outreach. So, you know, I want to be a producer. I want to provide a physical product in this world, but also like the kind of the intangible connections we all make around this stuff, and the creativity we can share together is really important to me. So it's just another big gratitude piece for you guys coming out, and I know you guys are all connected in your communities, and you can take these messages forward and, you know, create your own plans and ideas out of them. You know, there's so much room for growth in perennial agriculture. So yeah, anyways, to continue on the history, got through college, started the farm, kind of got disillusioned with just tilling the ground every year. Like I was saying, I was living in a really cold place, and so a lot of the food producers around there were meat producers. And that's great. I'm a plant person. And then I started, you know, I got bit by the permaculture bug and started realizing the integration between, you know, livestock and plants and, you know, ecosystem management. And so I said, I want to start focusing on perennials. I did that with no land. And so it was like, well, what do we do? Let's start talking about woody plant species, and a nursery. So I immigrated up here in 2018 with my then partner Krista, and well, she was in BC, and so we started this farm through Young Agrarians. We got contacted with them, and they hooked us up with a really lovely couple, Barry and Ursula. You'll meet them later. We'll have our Q&A on their porch, yeah, I mean, I got into this being like, I'm going to do it all. I'm going to do medicinal herbs and vegetables and a nursery, and it was very apparent that if you want to continue farming, that you got to kind of pick a lane. To sustain the sustainability is a big piece. So while I like doing this for all the feel goods, it was time to make enough money to continue doing it. And so I focused primarily on the perennial agriculture, like nursery crops, and made a website. You can find us at zerofoxtreecrops.com. We sell all around Canada, so everything's bare root and dormant. It's ordered between November to April and then shipped out. Kind of looks like a little plastic broomstick in the mail. And then you can pick up at the farm if you're local. Yeah, it's been really fun. It's been a challenging, daunting process. I didn't think I'd ever be an online business. It's just kind of how it worked out. I'm not much of a farmer's market guy. And you know, it was really about like how big of a reach could I have. I'm interested in so many different crops, and not just for the Kootenays, right? Like Canada has a bit of a gap when it comes to perennial nursery plants, and you know, a lot of them are sent up from the States, and they're not, you know, they're not based in this bioregion, or you know, just in a latitude perspective. Like, you know, ripening days matter with the amount of sun we get, and so there was a need, and I found kind of a little niche to get into, and so it was exciting. So this is the 6th year of the farm, and yeah, it changes every year. What I sell is based on what I find. I do order some stuff, connect with other, you know, growers and seed collectors, but a lot of our plants are just from what I can find. So, you know, thank you, Duke of Boris, for planting so many walnuts, and all these crazy lost apples and apricots, and you know, it's whatever is out there is these echoes from the past. And it's another thing that gives me encouragement is that people had figured this out. This has been a very big part of all of our cultures, from kind of wherever you're from. It's, you know, perennial agriculture and you know, living ecosystems that we're a part of, and that, you know, that we harvest from and put back into is all part of our DNA. So yeah, I'm really excited to just find stuff and get it out there. And you know, seedlings are exciting to me as much as clonal agriculture. Like you know, a cutting is great. You know what you're going to get, but it's an evolutionary dead end, right? So you start with a seedling and you don't know what you're going to get, and that's totally okay with me. Some people like certainty. This is kind of what I gave away when I went into agriculture, was certainty. And there's a lot of work to do, right? You know, a lot of these crops are bred for California and the nicer growing regions, and Canada deserves its crops too. And so that kind of starts with you guys and you know, my customer base, and people just being willing to just go for it and not, you know what's going to come. And that's how every single named fancy cultivar was a seedling at some point. And so that's kind of like another part of the work that I'm excited about doing is getting, you know, pushing that evolutionary boundary on what's possible for food crops. In, you know, different growing zones, in different latitudes, in different, you know, systems, whether it's, you know, just a straight up orchard or silvopasture, you know, planting, or we're talking, you know, ecosystem riparian buffers. There's so much opportunity and need for this stuff. So that's kind of why I got into this stuff. You know, we're going to go around and do a sharing circle. I think we have a lot of stuff to get into. You guys all met beforehand, which is great. So yeah, if anybody has anything they want to add, or what they're looking to kind of get out of the event, or things they're curious about, it'll give me an idea of what to talk about. But yeah, does anybody have anything to share or add to the conversation before we start doing our walk? So I just wanted to highlight this to start. This is the first tree I ever planted. This is planted in 2019. So I mean, I didn't know how fast things grow, and it grew fast. This is given to me by Tom Zett. Is a friend of mine up in Argenta. He's been planting trees that aren't from here for like 50 years. And his advice, or his kind of funny old man saying to me, was, he's just like, you know, when it comes to growing like woody perennials from seed, he's like, well, do you want the good news or the bad news? And I said, oh, hit me with the bad news. Or sorry, hit me with the good news. And then he'd say, oh, they all came up. And then it's like, hit me with the bad news. And he's like, they all came up. So, you know, be careful what you ask for. Yeah, you got to put them somewhere. They're going to grow fast. So, you know, we think about trees as kind of this long-term, maybe not in my lifetime sort of thing. And I'm worried that this thing's going to start producing nuts and have the squirrels flocking here in the next couple of years. Yeah. It's always a battle.
What does it take to start producing?
Well, it depends on the tree. If it's from seed, I'd say, you know, a Turkish hazelnut's going to be 7 to 10 years. It doesn't have another pollinator exactly nearby, but it can get cross-pollinated by other hazelnuts, which are all around. So yeah, we'll see. This tree comes from a seedling in near Burton in Fauquier, and was planted by some immigrants in like the early 1900s, and he got seed from that. And so it's just, you know, these generational things. So yeah, it's from the other side of the world, but now it's here.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's a hazel, did you say?
Yeah, it's a tree hazel, so it's gonna grow like tree form. Yeah, they have smaller nuts, maybe more of a wildlife hazelnut, but yeah, they grow fast. They're pretty exciting.
Turkish hazelnut in Lardo is like 35 feet tall.
Yeah, that thing's good.
It's
Yeah,
big.
Kate's been keeping me on to stuff. So yeah, when we started the farm, this was kind of just a horse pasture, and you know, there was trees growing, and we cut a couple of those down, dug up the root balls, and then I made a giant hugel mound, and that was a neat permaculture idea. It created the best Columbia ground squirrel habitat. So I had to redo my hugel mound, and that is just being kind of cover crop this year. I just cut down a veg crop on that, and then we're going to be putting in kind of a demonstration site for like you know, larger scale farmers that are going to be doing like trees in rows. So over the next couple of years, I'll just be planting this with chestnuts and walnuts that I graft, and putting them at spacing that's quite tight, and then intercropping them with berry bushes and support plants. So yeah, that's kind of what's on the horizon, but right now it's just a nice little bench.
When you say like chestnuts planted close,
Yeah.
so is that going to be like intense pruning?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. So when I talk to folks about how, you know, like how tight should we space them, you know, a chestnut tree at its final spacing, it can be 45 feet apart, right? Their crowns are huge. When we're dealing with seedlings, when we're dealing with uncertainty in agriculture, I like to come from the approach of overplant and thin later. You know, if you put 10 out, the fastest growing one might be great, might have the worst nuts. You get to find that out in 7 to 10 years, you know, if not longer. So, you know, you can plant trees as close as, you know, 5 feet together and thin to the eventual, you know, spacing that you want. And it just depends on your needs. Are you planting for animals where you're creating shade? Are you planting for just pure nut production? Is this going to be U-pick? Is it going to be mechanically harvested? What are your growing conditions like? I mean, if trees grow really slow, but they're precocious, then, you know, tighter spacing's great. You know, if you're down in South Georgia, it's like maybe put the hickory trees 45 feet apart because they're going to be massive. So it's all kind of context dependent, but it's easier to go in and remove trees later, and instead of being like, man, we should have planted a couple more closer together. And part of the reason why I started this nursery was because, you know, if you go to Giorama, like a walnut tree is like $120, and then they're also potted, and so that's taproot's going to get severed. And like, we want people to engage in this stuff. We want people to go big. And how can you go big and then cut down a walnut planted too tight to another walnut if it was $120? So, you know, the idea was young trees at affordable prices so people could just, you know, get them into their property and be part of that breeding project, that experiment. And so, yeah, I always kind of recommend planting tighter and thinning later, if you can afford it. And that's why it's like, great, buy trees from me, but learn how to propagate them, do it yourself, and then you're gonna be like, I have 400 red oaks that I don't know what to do with, and yeah, you'll be hammering those in every 3 feet, right? So, yeah, that's kind of like the advice I give people is in terms of spacing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ask one more quick question.
Yeah.
That space.
Yeah.
Are you gonna have protection from wildlife?
Well, yeah. I mean, we have like kind of two fences. If I was just out in a field and I didn't have it fenced, tree tubes work for sure. That's definitely a way to do it. And so you do need to protect them.
Yeah.
You can overplant and be like, well, whatever makes it. That's fine. Life's brutal out here. It feels like the ungulates just want to nibble on stuff that's novel. So yeah, they're just like, just to spite you. So yeah, definitely protect your trees if it's not from a fence, at least with a tree tube. Yeah, you can do like, especially if you're in the bush and being like, this is I'm going to plant 4,000 trees this year. You can, it's part of the reason why you don't just like clear cut or like just mow everything down. You know, you find the multiflora rose and you plant next to that, you know, companion plant with sea buckthorn. Great. It's a nitrogen fixer, but it's also spiky and keeps them off of it. So those are other kind of like mixed ways to keep your trees protected from the animal pressure. But yeah, tree tubes are good. Fencing's good for sure. And that's 5 to 6 years usually. So yeah, you're looking at kind of our main field planting. This is the stuff in ground, we'll call it. Everything's dug up in October, like first week in November usually, and then stored in that little shipping container up at the front there. And then as we kind of walk around, we'll get into more details when we get into the field, but these are the air prune beds. And so that basically creates a growing environment that I can plant super dense. The bottom are made out of mesh screens. So that taproot goes down, and instead of getting root bound like it would in a pot, it just stops and then it sends out its lateral roots. So you can get away with a lot tighter spacing, and then you're not creating like root bound trees that are all kind of girdled and circled in their root system. And it's great when you harvest them, they just pop out like carrots. Walnuts are awesome to grow, much easier to harvest than mulberries, right? So yeah.
Regular soil, or like what's on top?
No, I made all the soil. It took a couple of years out of my back for sure. But you know, of any of the amendments that I'm going to add, it's like when I make my own compost or source some manure, you know, peat moss isn't great to use in general, but perlite is gold in terms of like the aeration that you need for a lot of these crops. So you know, in your potting mix, if it's too heavy, it's gonna be problematic. So of all the things I've spent money on, and I've tried to minimize that just because we didn't have loans to start, we didn't have a lot of input, but I did buy some perlite when I was making my soil, and I literally was scraping, you know, pathway topsoil, mixing that with manure and tarping that so the roots would die, you know, for the grass that was left over, and then mixing that with perlite so that it'd be a nice loose mix.
Worth it over sand.
Yeah, well, yeah, if you really want to break your back, you can do the sand. Yeah, so.
Can you point out your favorite pruning design?
Yeah, we're going to get into a couple different ones. We'll talk about that when we're more in the field. There's kind of like, you know, this is a good angle. These are like the above ground air prunes. So, you know, they're up on stumps, and that works great. These will stay frozen well into the end of April some years. Whereas like last year, they were melted by like the first week of March, just because it was one of those Kootenay years. So if you're in a cold area, expect your air prunes, if they're not insulated by sawdust or soil, to be frozen well into the spring, which is fine for the walnuts. Those don't germinate until May anyways. But for a lot of, you know, for a non-king cherry that I want to grow in an air prune bed, then that seed's sprouted probably in late February. So that's why I like doing fall planting, but you can't fall plant if it's going to freeze solid. So then at that point it has to be insulated. And so we'll have some kind of examples of how I do different air prune stuff. Yeah. So yeah, without getting crop specific, you know, you can kind of see some of the trees that I planted. These are volunteer hawthorns. Ignore them, they're thorny. But that's Pacific dogwood in the back there. There's a red alder. We're going to be grafting medlars onto this hawthorn in the future. And then there's a patch of sunchokes. You know, they're pretty prolific, so I keep them out of our direct growing space.
What are you grafting onto the hawthorn?
Yeah, it's called medlar. So it's this weird old European fruit. It's compatible with like you could graft pears onto there as well. So yeah, this is the type of thing where it's like our native trees can be grafted onto when they're a compatible species. And the hawthorn's one of them.
It's popular in Europe, but it's not from Europe.
Yeah, it's not from, where's it from? Do you know?
From Persia.
Oh, okay, it's from Persia.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's where medlar's from.
Oh yeah, we have lots of varieties.
Okay, yeah, right. Yeah. Interesting, cool. There's a medlar tree at the Gray Creek store that is almost 100 years old. And yeah, the seed is double dormant, it doesn't germinate, and like, so I've been getting some signwood and we have some grafts out. But yeah, collecting genetics is, I'm on to actually going to other nurseries and buying stuff, but for the last 5 years, it's just been whatever I could find. So yeah, that has its own complications for sure. Yeah. Yeah, this pine tree was about chest height when we started. So yeah, it gets a little bit of water and a little bit of mulch, but really it just provides shade for the sheet mulching materials. Yeah, you can see more plantings back there. If we feel like it later, we can kind of go over there. This is my propagation for raspberry techniques, which is just let it go crazy in a corner somewhere for a few years and dig it up. Yeah, this will all get dug up in the fall, and I'll sell, you know, root rhizomes. And it's nice. I mean, you know, whether you're a farm and you want to have, you know, just an easy source of income that you don't have to maintain much, easy propagation material, right? Like these are untended, unweeded, not really watered or fertilized. And it was a type of raspberry that, you know, it's not the biggest berries. They're small, but they're so tasty. And really, I'm looking at it more as like a biomass producer. So it creates habitat. They sucker so readily, this variety, whatever it is, and it makes a lot of leaf material, which is a medicinal herb. So, you know, it's the more you find out about a plant, you really find out how many yields are coming out of that, whether it's just the you know, structural diversity it provides, or finding out that there's a big market for raspberry leaf. Like, it's not just about the berries. You can diversify yourself as far as the products that you put out. And that's kind of what I'm hoping more and more farmers get into when they get into perennial crops, is, you know, creating unlikely connections is creative, you know, is that creativity. And that's kind of what we need for food security, is to kind of reimagine our food system. So yeah, I like this raspberry patch because it's just doing its thing. We'll get into that later. Just kind of come around the circle. So yeah, we can start talking a little bit about other air prune bed designs. These are the air prune beds that we'll call them the in-ground beds. And so I moved quite a bit of sawdust. If you guys keep walking, you'll kind of get a nice little side shot of all these guys. And so the whole point of mounding all the sawdust, outside of creating great mouse habitat, which you definitely want to be aware of, is to keep it from freezing in the winter. And if I keep it from freezing in the winter, that means I can plant it in the fall. And so when we're thinking about propagating, you know, wild plants, or, you know, any woody perennial, I just kind of consider what does it just want to do in its natural state. And if, you know, the plums or the non-king cherries are coming out in August, right, they want to go in the ground, be moist. They don't want to dry out, you know, and that's what I found out the hard way the first couple of years, is I'd be buying dried non-king cherry seed and just getting like 1% germination. And it was just like, what's the problem? Then I later learned that, like, if the seed dries out, you're screwed. So to keep things moist, to try to plant them like in the fall is often good. You'll see these propagation books that say fall planted, and you can put them in the air prune bed in the fall. That's awesome, but then they're going to get eaten by rodents. So that's why the air prune beds are, you know, along with being like soil that I make so that they can grow quickly, and do that lateral branching thing so they don't root bound themselves, they're able to be contained with wire mesh at the top and mulched over. So they're basically being like, you mimic the planting process that would happen in nature, but then you protect it from rodent pressure so that all your seed doesn't disappear and you end up with a decent germination rate. So that's the idea of the in-ground air prune beds. It's all a process of learning. I mean, here's a good example. This bed has absolutely nothing in it. That's because I planted it with Cornelian cherry that I had stratified for a full year ahead of planting and still got no germination results. This is the Cornelian cherry bed that I harvested the seed 3 years ago. And so, but you know, my prior results doing this, I had no problem getting the germination. Why the big difference? I don't really know yet. So it's a lot of trial and error, and, you know, gathering like as much information as you can, and then just getting like hands-on. This is how it worked that one time, and then you do it and you're like, I thought I did everything the same, and something changed, the seed source changed, whatever it might be. But, you know, learning how stratification is, you know, when the seed coat's basically like breaking down so that it can germinate in the fall. Whereas like the warm stratification, sorry, I just described cold stratification, but the warm stratification, literally the embryo is still developing. So when a cherry seed falls and it hits the ground, that embryo is not even fully formed yet, and it needs warm temperatures to continue to develop. So if I were to harvest that cherry seed and just stick it in my fridge and like, oh, don't let it dry out, it wouldn't continue to develop that embryo, and I would get terrible germination. And trust me, I found out the hard way for some of these things. So you try to just mimic what it's going to do in its natural environment, and hopefully you get good results.
So you're going to leave it for another year, hopefully?
Yeah, so basically my job is to just keep that bed a little bit weeded, and then I'll protect it again this fall. And then hopefully we'll get great germination next spring. Eventually, when I get my mother cornelian cherry plants going in the food forest, they'll be my source for cuttings. And then you can kind of skip that seed step. But I do like the idea of just, there's a bunch of diversity there. And these are all from plants, from this area too. So it's kind of an extra bonus for me that they're cornelian cherries from Canada. So, yeah. Yeah, so like I said, we'll get in there and we'll kind of talk crop specific. I'm slowly expanding the edge. You can see hazelnuts and sea buckthorns planted in all this. A good example of our sheet mulch. I use lots of sawdust and wood chips, and a lot of gardeners are pretty wary of that stuff. I get it, right? It ties up nitrogen, but at the end of the day, bare ground is the worst thing you can have. So I'll take the nitrogen tie up and figure out how to make do and supplement if I need to. But bare ground is not allowed. That's kind of the goal. And hopefully the goal is to do that with plant cover, right? Closed canopy gardening is kind of the philosophy behind a lot of this perennial agriculture stuff. So, if it's sawdust, if it's wood chips, if it has cedar in it, if it's pure birch, whatever, use what you got. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Keep the ground covered, for sure, is always a good idea.
Well, and I read recently it's not maybe as bad as we think, but it ties up the nitrogen where it meets the surface of the soil.
That's right.
But not within the soil.
Yeah, it's not alleliopathic. It's not going to stop germination as the things. If you want to look at cedar as a type of mulch that's going to break down slower, that can be a really good thing, because it's a lot of work to bring mulch onto your property every year. And so if that stuff's getting eaten up by the soil, great, you're building organic matter, but then you're going to keep having to truck it in. So to have stuff that lasts a little longer is really nice. Yeah, some more random tree plantings. That's a black alder. There's a wolf willow next to it. This is a very dry area, so I was trying to plant things that were pretty hardy. I don't know why I planted the red alder. That's a coastal species, but it's doing all right. And then it was a dry year, and it was a decently wet year, but I didn't irrigate over here, and so our sugarberry tree decided to go to sleep already and lose all its leaves. It did this last year, and I thought it was dead, and nope, it just wanted to go to sleep in August. So we'll see how it does. But that's the kind of thing, like these plants will adapt to your bioregion if they're not from here even. So, that's kind of what just throwing stuff at the wall is. Like, if it doesn't work out, I'm not going to lose sleep over it, right? I started that thing from seed. And if it makes it, great, but we have to take lots of, attempts, right? The old Wayne Gretzky quote, every shot that you don't take doesn't go in. So, certainty's nice, but trying stuff out is good too. And if there was a sugarberry tree here one day and the amount of wildlife that thing could feed, I would be so stoked on that. And if not, we'll put something else there, like an American plum or something that will make it. So
Deciduous over the last 10 years have started struggling.
Yeah.
10 years ago that you could see deciduous turning color in August.
Sure. Yeah.
And was kind of the tail end when the June rain kind of disappeared. That's when the deciduous started suffering. And
sure.
we see at our place the first birches are packing it now after years and years of shutting down in August.
Yeah.
They're slowly disappearing.
And that's, when you notice stuff like that, but then there's that one birch tree on the side of the highway that didn't shut down. that's what gets me fired up, where it's just like, oh, that's the seed.
Side by side, they just came up on their own.
Yeah.
They're 6 feet apart.
Yeah.
And one died this year. There was nothing. And
Sure.
the other one is just doing fine. It's getting a little yellow now.
Yeah.
But they're siblings, and one is just making it, and the other
Totally. And that's where it's just like, genetically modified stuff, like changing genomes around, like that's all great, but we are all breeders, right? All of our ancestors were breeders, because you can just see it. You're like, okay, that one works here in these crazy conditions. I'm going to save the seed from that one, and we're going to try again.
So then I wonder if it's kind of like, oh, you shouldn't really irrigate your planted out permanent stuff that much.
Sure.
Just so that it can...
I mean, yes and no. I mean, if you want to find out quick how to kill a bunch of trees, don't water them.
Yeah.
But also, then you're going through that trial and error faster. A really good example of that is with hazelnuts. So there's the hazelnut blight, kills eastern filberts. It's definitely in this area now. They did everything they could to keep, imported hazelnuts out. Like, they think they're going to stop pathogens from moving around in this globalized culture. Well, they didn't. And so it's around. And so, the argument by some of the hazelnut growers are like, look, we need to have the perfect, clonally produced, university produced, patented stuff. And it's like, okay, we could do that, or we can just try seedlings out too. And I'm like excited if it gets sick. Cool, we found that out. I didn't want to find out in 15 years and have that thing die. I want to find that out in the first couple of years. And, that's what throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks is all about. Because, there are, the way, like, say the American chestnut develops, like, that thing's probably not coming back without a helping hand from our best scientists. And that's just kind of the way that blight resistance works in the genome, right? It's really complex. It's not just a single factor. But it is also, it's like, if we can ground test these things quickly, then you get that feedback and then you can move on. And so that's kind of like the idea of like, yeah, don't water and find out which one is the hardy one, right? Save those seeds and do it again. And it seems like a lifelong endeavor, right? And it's just like, you're one generation of many, many generations ahead of you. So take that to heart. It doesn't have to be just about the shade of the tree that you're going to sit under, but our ancestors moving forward, right? So yeah, we're going to circle back around. We'll stop briefly and talk about some farm-based fertilizers, and then we'll get into the forest garden. So that's kind of our circle around the farm. Yeah, thanks for walking that part. And I could say right now, as we kind of regroup back over there, that all of the farm practices here it's all pretty hand done. I could totally have a tractor and love it up. It would probably replace, 10 to 15 hours that I lease a tractor out a year for. So yeah, there's our broad fork, there's our wheelbarrow, that's the rake. That's all I use really.
Forgot to mention your back.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the wheelbarrow is a recent upgrade. Like, it was all buckets for years. You don't have to fix a tire on a bucket. So, and that's just kind of maybe a tough head 30-something way to look at it. I want to do less, or like be more efficient. I want to be able to do more with less. But also, I don't want to have to not farm just because I can't afford a tractor, right? And on that note, there are so many great people in this community, and I guarantee there's so many good people in your communities where with putting yourself out there and collaborating is really important. I don't know, it's like my dad wasn't a farmer. He's just kind of like a loudmouth Jew from New York City, and what he taught me is how to talk to people. So when I see a cool tree and I knock on their door, I can kind of strike up a conversation, and I've never been turned down. People are so excited to share what they have, and I've made friendships and crazy community that I never thought I would have from just, like looking up at an oak tree and being like, what is that all about? And now people contact me. Like, I mean, Kate's hit me up about this crazy mulberry patch that's on the south end of Kootenay Lake. And by the way, it's a great year. They're going off. Oh, yeah. And it's crazy diversity, but it was planted by a bunch of, people who aren't from here probably 100 years ago. Yeah. And they're just sitting out there. But I would never have known it if Kate didn't, contact me about that. So, you know, all the magic's out there, and you definitely haven't seen everything, and it's more about like that human connection piece and you know, being vulnerable and saying, I don't know, what do you know? Really easy conversation starter. What's your favorite tree? Or do you know any cool plants around here? And often people have these stories and they don't have the names for the plant. So I don't know what it is, but it's got these big leaves, and you see those trees on the side of the road before you get to the Great Creek. So, oh, those are sycamores. And so just kind of remember that, like, if you don't know what to do, it's all good. Someone around you does. And there's just like so much abundance in this world around us. And that's just kind of what doing this stuff has tapped me into. And that's what I'm stoked to share. We don't need to invent our way into sustainability. It's all there. We just have to put the pieces together and kind of connect. So, yeah. All right.
Brian,
Yeah.
what the black plastic pieces are on the
Yeah.
milk cow?
So totally. My when I lived in Argenta, my landlord, he has a CNC machine, and so those are little tree fences I use. They're not the most aesthetically pleasing things in the landscape, but they're free. And that actually, if you're wondering, like, what is that thing? It's he gets these big sheets of black plastic, and he uses a CNC machine to cut out snow skates for some Amazon seller. And then he has all these that are going to the dump, and I'm like, I'll take those. Those are perfect tree fences. So, I mean, that's a good thing to kind of point out, because, like,
Do you put them upright? Or?
no, you circle them and put a couple Tech screws in, and then a couple pieces of rebar, and you have, you know, a 4.5 foot tall cage that's about 1 meter wide, which is what most trees need for making it through the first 5 or so years of their life. And after that, hopefully they're above browse height, so they can get nibbled on a little bit, but they'll continue on. Younger trees always have more palatable leaves than older ones, so it takes time for a tree to actually make the chemical defenses to deter browsing. So, you know, with just being big enough to take it, they're also like old enough to produce the things that, yeah, deter the pressure.
I was wondering,
Yeah.
what are your inputs other than sawdust?
That's a great question and a good segue for what we're about to talk about.
Well done.
Yeah, so I certainly like source manure. You know, if I add too much manure to the field, the trees grow so fast that it becomes kind of a storage issue for me. You know, I want to get people the healthiest, most robust specimen they can at a cheap price, but also there's kind of diminishing returns there. And when you grow a woody perennial, like if you're growing something and you're just like, yeah, I really want to get a bunch of growth, and you're layering on, you know, strong fertilizers, they can grow really fast, and then they're going to have trouble lignifying, so making permanent wood that they need to get through the winter. So a lot of the times I'm cool with short tops and nice developed, like, robust root systems.
So are you testing the soil before you're...
No, I mean, we should have tested to start to see the difference, but the rule of thumb is add organic matter. And that's really going to be your buffer towards, you know, pest problems, disease problems, growth problems. It would be interesting because this place was just almost pure sand is the way it felt like. And you could see the color shift and just dumping in wood chips. I mean, sawdust for pathways, but wood chips for growing beds. And fresh wood chips are amazing, especially if you can get it just freshly cut. Like the off-gassing that happens from those. I mean, you guys have seen wood chip piles, they heat up, you know, like crazy. You could heat your hot water for a year off those things. So I got lucky with an arborist company that just wanted to bring like 20 dump loads. So this is the end of those 20 dump loads. I'm like getting nervous because I got to go get some wood chips this year. But yeah, that stuff's gold. You know, you can top dress with alfalfa meal and feather meal and all the organic stuff. But there's definitely other tree growers that have, like Akiva Silver from Twisted Tree Nursery in the States has talked about this, where he was getting so much growth because his beds were so rich. He had like a free manure source that would just show up, that he had to add sawdust into his beds just to slow it down and get that ratio back to, you know, more of a fungally dominated soil that is more akin to perennials as opposed to vegetables. But you kind of you see what your needs are and where your soil's at. These guys do really good soil testing, so...
Just do a soft plug. We are also the Kootenays and Boundary Farm Advisors. Was funded by Ministry of Agriculture and Food last year and this year to do the Kootenay Soil Building Network. So if you're interested in all things soil building, we have a series of webinars over the winter, but we've been doing on-farm soil sampling and some trials, including in this area. So stay tuned for more.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, let's go back to.
You're growing in straight wood chip then?
No, I mean, like I'll basically plant and then layer on like an inch or so because I want to keep that soil armored, right? And eventually, you know, between weeding and decomposition, right? Like you'll see the beds, like, you know, almost all the beds were covered in wood chips by the beginning of the year, and then you can see some bare soil showing now, but that's okay because hopefully their leaves are covering and shading that soil, which really helps with our weed management, right? You know, that's something I feel bad for, like the direct seeded lettuce growers, man. They got to battle those weeds. So yeah, to kind of armor the soil with whatever you got is the.
That's another reason you like to plant close.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I was kind of shocked by like how dense you can plant these things. It's almost, and like, but it's not like their roots get tangled together and you have to rip. Like, I don't know, everybody's hanging out down there. It's pretty friendly. So no, it works. It works pretty well, for sure.
Do you have to do anything to kill the seed, the weed seed, like you torch or do anything before?
No, because I mean, the difference between us and the veggie growers is like everything gets put in April. Like I'm done planting by like April 20th. So a lot of like our annual weeds are just popping up then, and things are in the ground. You know, I'll transplant, you know, little mini seedlings from the year before in at that point, or, you know, be direct seeding like hazelnuts and chestnuts. But, you know, those weeds come up a little bit later. We're adding mulch. I mean, we hand weed a lot of stuff. I'll stir-a-hoe the pathways. So, yeah, it's a little bit. But honestly, like, the labor for this farm for weeding is pretty light. It's been nice. Yeah, for sure. Though I like weeding. It's kind of, I get lost, and you're getting lost in the weeds, as the saying goes. Cool. All right, let's go check out the fertilizer bucket. Well, it's a good question. I mean, when I start a new plot, I like to cardboard almost everything and then wood chip over that, and then the cardboard gets soft, and then I just stab in, and you can put Perennial straight into that. I was doing cardboard and pathways for years, and that was just a pain in the butt because it was hard to walk on. So lots of edges, you know, trying to make the sawdust moat around the edge of the farm was a big deal. I'll tell like the idea, like the circle we just walked is like, for me, it's like the circle of fear for like rodents, right? Like they have to be exposed to cross into it to go steal all the nuts and stuff. So that's part of the reason that circle's there, is to just give a little bit of a buffer barrier. And then, yeah, just to, you know, this was just a grass field. Like, I think in the future, I'd like to till any walking pathway or egress, and then just plant it with this clover stuff. A lot easier to mow, puts nitrogen in, flowers really well. But I mean, the mill's just down the road. So when they show up, as long as it doesn't have bark in it, I can, you know, hand spread a dump load of sawdust in 20 minutes.
Would you not be concerned about the clover, like, infiltrating your beds?
Not as much as the grass, no. And I mean, same deal. I like, you know, cardboard the edge, sawdust it. I mean, and especially, it's like, you guys have probably done this, but like if you look under what, you know, happens underneath the cardboard and a sawdust layer, it's just like the worms go crazy, like life just proliferates. So everything gets spongy and soft.
Yeah, it's really nice.
It's really nice.
The wood chip and sawdust pathways too are really nice.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. I mean, my ultimate goal is to have like a big bokashi pit. And so if you guys know what bokashi is, right, it's made with the special microbes that can basically colonize a substrate anaerobically. And so if I had a big pit, I'd fill it with sawdust, and I'd inoculate it with molasses and the microbes, and then that would ferment for however long, you know, a couple weeks to a couple months, and then all the mulching we would do with our sawdust would be inoculated. That's kind of the goal. That's when I own a dump trailer and a mini digger and all that. Till then, it's not, you know, it's just raw sawdust. And I don't know, I mean, things grow pretty well. Like, I don't have a lot of experience in the bare root, you know, plant world before doing this. And so I get feedback from customers and the plants that I've bought from other nurseries, and people are just like, oh my God, man, your root systems are huge. Like, I can't believe you're selling it at this price. And I'm like, oh, was it good? You know, I don't know. So it's cool to get that feedback of like, no, I'm hitting a standard that is good for people, where it's like, it's affordable, big plants, healthy root systems, and I can do it all in like, I mean, this is less than a half acre or so of growing beds. And that's like, you know, talking about the bigger vision for this stuff, like I would love for these things to be repeated, you know, maybe not next door to me, right, necessarily, but like in different bioregions, because every area is going to need a perennial plant nursery that's specific to the area. You know, if we're going to get farmers on to growing perennial crops that are adapted for their area, we're going to need a lot more nurseries.
Sure, and it's nice not to have to ship it too far.
Totally. I mean, honestly, the shipping part's one of the easiest things. It's more difficult coordinating with people for local pickup than me just going down to the post office and dropping. It's Kootenay people, man. They want to, and like you can tell, right? I like to engage, so it's like we get 10 people.
What about Thursday?
Yeah. So, and if you guys buy plants from me, there's gonna be a designated pickup day. It's like I put my talking hat on and I'm just chatting the whole day, and so that's like a couple days of the year, and then I'm done with that, and we'll have field tours and stuff, right? So, anyways, all right. So we're transitioning to the farm-based fertilizers. This is stuff adapted from Korean natural farming. If you guys have heard of that, basically it's just fermented plants in buckets. It's not that much more complicated. Where it comes from, the K&F side of it, the Korean natural farming, you know, after World War II and the Korean War, they were cut off from their fertilizer supply. And so the government really invested hard into creating inputs for their farms so that they didn't have mass famine. Because, I mean, that was what was happening. So those systems were developed. JDAM is the other name for it. But, you know, the kind of Western adapted version of this is this Nigel Palmer book, Regenerative Grower's Guide to Garden Amendments. It goes into all sorts of different stuff, and there's a really handy table at the back that's going to show like the different mineral content of all the different weeds. So you find out really quickly that like chickweed is this insane multivitamin. I mean, if we couldn't have multivitamins and we would just ferment chickweed juice and you take a tablespoon of it because you're like, wow, that covers everything, right? But that's where the soil testing comes in. So if you know you're deficient in some you know, mineral that you're just not going to get out of compost, so boron, right, is a common nutrient that is missing in the Kootenays, and you can add all your, you know, homemade compost or manures that you want, you're not going to get boron out of that stuff. So to find a plant that can sequester it from the soil, make it bioavailable in its plant tissue, and then, okay, great. How do we then get that into our crops? That's where these fermented plant juices come in. This book's going to get into a lot more than that, but that's what we're going to highlight today. That's the main thing I use at the farm. Yeah.
How do you get iodine into the soil?
Maybe a plant, well, probably seaweed would be a good one. We don't grow seaweed here, but there's probably a plant somewhere that like sequesters it.
The glacier went through here,
Mm-hmm.
and it leached out all of those minerals.
Yeah.
And I know there was thyroid deficiency in this area.
Sure.
Where I was growing up, I saw goiters and stuff like that when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And then iodized salt came in, and it
Sure.
disappeared.
Right.
So, but I'm just wondering, how the hell do you add it to it?
Yeah, and there's they have like a digital database of plant, like, so they've got people to sample the plant materials. Something I'm talking to Sarah about doing is getting tests of some of these, and you basically just find a crop that's going to be able to you know, scavenge the remaining iodine that is around, and then okay. Anyways, yeah, it's like that's kind of what we'll talk about, is that you can get it into a bioavailable form and then put it back in a water-soluble fashion. And so, yeah, take the lid off this. This is a mix of plants that I grow in the garden. You can also forage these things. This is like lovage and motherwort. We're going to pass the bucket around, and you can kind of get a taste of it. If you want, you can literally taste it. It's food safe. Don't mind the white stuff. It's a friendly microbe. But basically, it's just putting plants in buckets. I shred them up with sugar first, and so that is going to be osmotic, so it's going to pull the water out. You guys have made sauerkraut before. It's the same process. Instead of salt, it's just sugar. You want to add that sugar or a carbohydrate source so that you're feeding the good guys, because you're putting it in an anaerobic conditions. So, you know, when people talk about like, yeah, I've heard you can just like stuff a bunch of comfrey in a bucket and add some water. It stinks, but yeah, it works. And it's like, okay, but I don't want to deal with stuff that like makes my hands smell like, you know, God knows what for how knows long. Like, and that's because you didn't add a carbohydrate source to do that fermentation properly. So while those minerals will be there, what you're harboring here is really good microbes. And then you're pulling the minerals from the plant material out, making it that are already bioavailable, making it water soluble.
The sugar helps?
Yeah, exactly. It's just gonna. Yeah, in the book it talks about 1 to 1, and I can't afford that much sugar. And like, you know, sugar, the production of that and all that. So, I mean, I go as low as like 1 to 10. There's a barrel behind us with a trash bag on top of it. Yeah, as you can see, Sarah pointing at it. I have a little bit more to add to it, but that thing is packed full, and that will be all of my fertilizer for this farm and probably a couple friends' farms. Because what you find out is that the juice that comes out of this, so I don't add any water, right? You can for the super dry herbs, like I think nettles, you might want to add some water, but purslane, you certainly don't need to. That's like a succulent almost. And so it's super concentrated. The application ratio is 1 to 500, so you know, if that 50-gallon barrel of weeds yields me conservatively 10 gallons of liquid, that's good for 500 times that. So yeah, it's quite efficient. It takes about a 500-gallon water feed to do this whole farm. So I use about a gallon of fermented plant juice per application. I do that, you know, if I'm super zealous, 7 or 8 times in the year. If it's you know, if everything's just growing fine and I'm like, I don't need that much, you know, 3 or 4 times. You can kind of add nutrients at certain times of the year. There's different nutrients that are better for forming fruit or a flowering or a vegetative. So because I'm just focusing on vegetative growth, I just kind of mix it all together. And, you know, it was the same way when I got into herbal medicine. I had so many different tinctures and that got overwhelming, and then I stopped doing it. And now it's just like, you know what, I just mix the plants together, get a bunch of healthy stuff that I can grow or forage myself. And, you know, based on the books like mineral content tables, it covers kind of all the bases. The nice thing is like you can't really overdo it. There's no burning plants with this stuff. The plants are going to take what they need and then leave what they don't. I overhead sprinkle for applying it. I use a fertilizer injector, which is mounted on that tree over there. Feel free to check it out later. But basically what it's doing is without electricity, just through a fancy pump, I forget the name of the physics around it, but you hook it into your main line, and so it's going to pull up the liquid from a concentrate. So I'll take a gallon of this stuff, mix it into 20 gallons of water. That's where you could add some fish hydrolysate or humic acid or seaweed extracts or all the things all of us organic growers use, right? But at the very least, just some fermented plant juice that has all the happy microbes in it and the mineral content injected at you know, a ratio that's going to end up being a 1 to 500 is what you need. And I don't mind watering my pathways because that's watering the mulch that I later just shovel into the beds. It's going to facilitate the breakdown of that organic matter and make it go faster, which is kind of the goal. So yeah, here, I'll pass this bucket around. It's kind of heavy. Sorry about that.
Point of doing that fermentation with sugar compared to doing a pile of compost.
That's right.
Speeding it up, it's getting more minerals, vitamins out of the plants fast.
Yeah, and you're not wasting anything to off-gassing, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Now what about using wasted vegetables or wasted fruit instead of sugar?
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, wasted apples, and that's another way, an application. So, I mean, literally just a bunch of apples in a bucket with water is going to create vinegar. And then vinegar is a great solvent, and then you can dissolve herbs and other plants with a high mineral content into that. And yeah, and then you're doing that. You know, I get an apple cider press, and so I'll dump all of my plant material into that press when it's time and squish it out, and then you're left with the juice. I was hand squeezing bags for a while. That was a nightmare. You know, it's just a fermented plant juice, FPJs. Yeah, definitely. Oh yeah, and I'll pass this book around too. Yeah, for sure.
Probably wouldn't burn with a foliar application. Would you backpack too?
No, foliar is great. honestly, foliar is even better, especially if you're like, I don't have an injector and I only have so much. I want to get the most out of this ferment or this fertilizer. Yeah, I think a foliar application is like absorbed 20 times more than, yeah. So, and then it works. It's just like, you know what I mean? I was doing that for a while, and that's why I got the fertilizer injector, because before that I was walking around with a hose and hand watering beds, but it was, you know, precious material. Yeah. So the fertilizer injector, I got to say too, is awesome. These things used to be thousands of dollars and not really available to your kind of like small to medium farmer. Amazon saw that so many people were going onto their site and looking for a fertilizer injector that there wasn't one, that they decided to produce one. So I forget, it's like Nutri is the name of the brand, but that's like an Amazon offshoot, and they made one for a couple $100. And I mean, the amount of hours it saved me just this year, it's already paid for itself. And now I'm not like tenuous. I can do an application once a week if I want to.
Could you also just sort of top dress lightly on the beds, and then every time you
with this stuff?
Water, it'll just...
Sure. Yeah. And that's, I mean, that kind of delves more into, because like the whole point is the water soluble like extract that you get, so just that liquid. Yeah. But if you wanted to do that, that'd basically be like bokashi your food or fruit scraps. Yeah. And so instead of having to run it through a compost pile, you can just apply it straight to a bed. And then obviously mulch over that, so it's kind of protected and it can break down in the soil.
And how long does the liquid, like if you were to squish the liquid out of that, how would you store it? Can
Sure.
it freeze?
Yes. The shelf stability of this stuff is really high because the pH goes down quite low. So below 4 is the pH. And yeah, people know from food safe standards, like once you get down to that level, it's going to stay good. I'll squeeze all that juice out, hopefully if I can get around to it this side of the year. And then it'll be good, I mean, probably for years, certainly till a year from now,
and
right?
It's okay to freeze?
Yeah, I think you'd kill the microbial content potentially, or diminish it a little bit, but you certainly wouldn't diminish the mineral content. Right. So, Sarah, how are we doing on time?
Oh, we're doing good.
Yeah.
What's the ratio again with the sugar?
10 after 11.
I think a safe bet is 1 to 4. You know.
You were doing one. You were doing 1 to 10.
Yeah. When it was just like, dude, I just harvested so many pounds of nettles, and like, how much sugar do you can you really afford? Sorry, did you say again?
10 after 11.
10 after 11. Okay, we're doing good.
We're right on schedule.
Awesome.
If you had access to animal manure, how would you modify? Would you take it and? Is it possible to like modify the process so that you get the nitrogen, but then also get the minerals? Like, how would you do that?
I mean, I definitely have seen people who like make crazy manure pits and bokashi it. They're usually in Europe because Europe's always ahead of us, right? So I think that could be a good way to do it. It certainly would. I don't know if you're making it more, because that's kind of what the ruminant does, right? It breaks it down with its own acids. It's making grass all of a sudden bioavailable in manure form. So is that worth but like certainly combining the two would be really good. For any manure that I add, I definitely make biochar and then, mix it into the manure and add it so it's not just leaching off. It's definitely a good practice, and it goes really far. Like you don't need much biochar to just blacken your soils.
You make your own?
Yeah, for sure. Make a really hot fire and then stack up all the slab wood I can collect from the mill and work my butt off for like 2 hours, like once or twice a year. And yeah. I mean, people like have these, these burn barrels and they're super efficient. It's so small, and like I'm looking for a volume that I just have this pit over there, and
so it's in a pit.
Yeah, exactly. And then I just dig it out. It's probably not as efficient, or I know it's not as efficient as like real pyrolysis machines, but I'm willing to take that as a loss because wood's easy to get, and this is where the creativity with forestry and what people are going to be looking forward. So instead of just pile and burn, right, and just letting all that carbon disappear into the atmosphere, there's fancy forestry, like it's like a conveyor belt with a semi truck, and it's literally like trucking the wood waste through it, coming out at the other end as biochar. Those are multi-million-dollar machines. For farm scale, a pit's great. We have a lot of slash available to us in the Kootenays. So the quick rundown on biochar is like you want to have all your materials staged. They should all be somewhat uniform in size, so no big stumps, but then skinny stuff, because you'll just be left with thicker stuff at the end, which you can pick out, and that's all good. but you know, if it's uniform, it's dry, and then you make a really hot fire, and then you're basically trying to suffocate that fire. And the suffocation process is the pyrolysis. So the reason why it's in a pit is because if it wasn't, oxygen could just get in there really quick. It'd be burning up that carbon matter. And instead, it's limiting how much oxygen is getting to the bottom of the pit, and then you're suffocating it from above. It's super hot though, so it's creating, you know, this charcoal. And then at a point, I go, all right, that's it. I have nothing else to suffocate it with. If I just let this thing keep burning, it's going to burn up all that valuable carbon I just made. And that's when you bring out the hose. You have your water ready, you have water pressure, and you dump it and extinguish it at that point. And then after it's totally, make sure it's fully out. I've had piles where I'm like, cool, it's out, I'm going home. And I come back the next day and like the pile's gone. I'm like, I did not put it out, right? Like,
Typically it takes what, 2 hours?
I mean, it's relative to how much wood you have, but it really doesn't take that long. But you're going to be moving the whole time. It's not like sit back and look at the fire.
Watch it.
You got to keep suffocating it, right? So that's where your materials are staged, everything's ready.
I didn't catch, what are you suffocating with?
Just more wood.
Oh, you're just adding fresh wood to burn.
Yeah.
I see.
Like that burn pile that's there is just what starts, but I'm going to show up with like 5 or 6 truckloads of like slab wood and stage it around that pile. And then we'll light that thing. It'll get nice and hot. Because I mean, that's just wood waste I had to get rid of anyway. So, but then it'll get nice and hot, and then I'll have all this like easily, you know, throwable wood to go on. And once all that's gone, you hose it out. And then what's left is basically a bunch of charcoal. I shovel it out. Any parts that aren't clearly carbon, I'm gonna like chuck back to the side so that it gets burnt again. And then I throw it in the dry path onto a tarp, so that it's, you know, easy to move after that. And I'll just drive over it with my truck like a bunch. I mean, yeah, that's it. I got a nice magnet too, just in case. But yeah, it's pretty simple stuff.
Nickelback while you do that?
Oh yeah, just Creed all day. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and it works pretty damn well. And if you see what they're charging for biochar in the store, it's like, oh my God, I'm not paying for this stuff. Like, I'm gonna go have a fire with some friends, and you know, once it's hosed out, then you can drink the beer. But no, it's definitely like a full-on process when you're making it. But that stuff does need to be charged up. It will rob nitrogen out of the soil. So, you know, if you want your manure to go further, definitely charge it up with some biochar.
So it holds the nutrients?
Yeah, so it has something to do with the ionic exchange. So like it's basically like a magnet for nutrients. The nitrogens and the phosphorus and the potassiums all stick to that carbon, whereas they would just eventually run off with water. And so when you can when you can have a good, I think it's the cation exchange capacity, if I'm saying that word, cation. Okay, cool. And so it holds on to it, but then it releases it really easily when a plant wants it. And that's just kind of what you're aiming for with the biochar. It also darkens the soil and adds a bunch of organic matter that's not going to degrade for like within our lifetime. So yeah.
Yeah, and it provides, microscopically, it provides homes for microorganisms.
Totally. If you look at it with a microscope, the porousness, the surface area of these little molecules are insane. So like the fungi can just get up in it. And yeah, really good thing to do is if you have a spot where you're always kind of peeing, I just fill that, like I have my buckets with like the holes on them that we stratify things in anyways, but I'll fill that with biochar, and then that's your pee bucket. And so the liquid will obviously run off, but all that nitrogen and minerals that come out of you get tied up in that biochar. So if you have outhouses, like a urine diverter into a biochar bucket is a good idea, and then you charge that stuff up, and it's just great. So you're gonna
biochar is, as long as it's the black, that's like charcoal, biochar, it's the same thing.
Yes, and here's the crazy thing: there's so much research to be done there, because you know, what's good biochar versus bad biochar. There is variance, and they're not exactly sure why. I mean, if you listen to, like, I listened to a podcast on one of the premier researchers, and they literally try to make it and make it identical, like, so a repeatable experiment in production, and then they get different results, and they're like, why? It was the same waste input, it was the same fire temperature, like, and so you know, there can be there can be like negative outcomes, right? Where it's like it's not grabbing the nutrients right or tying up, you know, carbon in the right way. So
you can get creosote production in your biochar if the timing is not right, the temperature and what have you. So you have part of your production doesn't have the right temperature, and you're actually producing what's inside your chimney, which is anything but healthy. And you can have that in your biochar production. And that might be if the batch is made uneven versus the other batch is completely even on the same technical parameters, you can have a different outcome.
Totally. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot to be done there, but I'm always kind of like go for it kind of guy anyways. So I don't know, we have these things. We haven't had any negative results. It's only been positive, but
Notice it being creosote.
sure.
Mostly, I mean, once you've cleaned the chimney, then you know what the stuff looks like.
If it's a little shiny, if it's a little, you might
right, totally.
Yeah, exactly, if it's shiny.
So yeah, I think, keep an open mind with that stuff. Get as much information as you can and test it out.
In the acorn stuff, they have a thing on some old hazelnut forest that they'd found that was 150 years old. And they analyzed it. And it had biochar in it from and that had not been farmed since but the hazelnuts were still growing.
The biochar doesn't go away.
They started reproducing that. So there's a whole bunch of information at Acorn. And there's a video on this. And it was interesting because they analyzed the soil. They hadn't grown anything for 150 years, and yet that was high in all the nutrients, all the bacteria, and the fungi, and whatever else. And it was high in calcium and magnesium because of fish. And bones that were thrown on it. And it's still like that. And now they're making biochar. So I would look on that and ask them, like, what's the secret to it? You know, there must be, because they had a little furnace thing that they used to produce the biochar. There was a little metal thing about this big. I mean, it wasn't huge. So anyway.
Sarah, you were going to ask something about...
I was just going to ask, after you've driven over it with the truck, does it come down to a fine powder, or is it chunks? How does it actually get, when and how does it get applied?
Nice practical questions, thank you. Because I had all those questions too, and I was just figuring it out. The idea is to crush it as fine as you can, like actual biochar producers are powderizing it, with like a hammer mill and stuff. It's cool because like I'll drive over it a bunch and then rake it, and like it's the same idea as an avalanche, right? Like the bigger stuff rises to the top. That's why they have those airbag things. You can tell what I like doing in the winter. And so like it's the same deal. So you can drive over it a whole bunch, you can rake it, the bigger chunks will come to the top, you drive over it again. And then when we go to apply it, you could sift it at that point if you didn't want any of the chunk stuff to go in. I'm not a perfectionist. I find chunks in the field and I'm just like, oh, look at that, and like crush it, and I'm like, cool, it crumbles. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of just like, at that point I'll take the biochar, mix it with the manure, or that's like one of the hours that I get a tractor to come, right? We have all of our manure preps, all the biochar's ready. He has a mixing spot. He mixes it all up, piles it right near one of the field entrances, and then we hand apply.
And that's usually the fall or the spring or both?
Depends on when I got stuff done, but usually the spring. Ideally it would be the fall because our springs would be so much smoother if I didn't have all that stuff to do, but we're getting better and more organized, so.
Better for nutrient retention though.
Yeah, to add in the fall, you're saying?
No, in the spring.
Oh, yeah, I mean, if it's with the biochar, the idea is, because it could go both ways, better for nutrient retention, but also the more time it's in there to set up, it's going to feed the microlife, and so maybe that's a good thing.
Might need to get populated by mycorrhiza in order.
Yeah, and I mean, you could take it a step further, and then you're making bokashi juice, which is just EM1, and adding that, and charging up your char. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. I don't think there's like a right way. I mean, with any of this stuff, it's like the sawdust wood chip conversation. It's just like, do with what you have, and don't just not do it just because it's not perfect. I mean, yeah. that's the attitude with any of these perennials, and just like, you got to go for it, because like however you do it at first isn't going to be how you end up doing it in the long run. It's like, we're all here to get experience and not burn out in the process. So yeah.
Question for the group then, if you had the choice, if you would go to the mulch chip grocery store and you could actually get different compositions, would you rather, if there's the opportunity, get just straight deciduous leaves and really small twigs mulched, deciduous coarser chips, or just straight cedar, and then in what consistency, if you could have straight chips through a chipper, or you could have longer strands through a mulcher, if those options would exist, would you go for it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I was the kid that like went to the soda fountain and mixed all the sodas together. It didn't taste good.
We mixed all the sodas together.
But like, I think diversity is key, and I don't want to just say that because it's a nice thing to say, but if you only stuck with deciduous stuff, it's only going to foster that part of the microorganisms that like that. If you only did the cedar stuff, same conversation.
I'm just wondering if you want to be more in control of, versus going down to the mill and okay, oh shit, today it's just mainly cedar.
Yeah, I don't know, man. This is my whole struggle, is giving up the control part.
I was just gonna say that. I've been wanting to say that for about 20 minutes. You can't control nature.
But yeah,
you can pinhole something and go down a rabbit hole, but like ultimately,
that could end up being really site specific.
You can't ask the mill
biomass, so that would be based on what suited your site to produce.
Totally.
Well, this is exactly where I'm coming from. I have acres and acres of it, and it's just like, it just piles up in mountains.
Yeah.
And I don't want to burn it, but it's easy to separate things out. I'll just do a deciduous run, and I just do a cedar run.
Yeah.
And it's,
I think from the business standpoint, if you just had pure deciduous piles, you'd be able to charge more for those because people have it in their head.
I think for growing mushrooms, you want
and certainly from what I've seen, like, you know, the initial gold mine of wood chips that came up, they were doing all this like road clearing. And it was like all cottonwoods and poplar, and I was just like, yes, oh my god, yeah,
road salt on your
yes, it's smart. I mean, on that note, I do supplement like manure piles sometimes with things like green sand. You can buy these bag amendments. I want to try practices out and advocate for things where it's like we don't have to go to the store for this stuff. So while you can, and then you can make it perfect so that, you know, when your KBFA advisor comes, they're like, your soil results are so nice. It's like gold star for you. Yeah, exactly, right? But it's cool to see what, especially it's like, you know, like the bur oak that I harvest from in Kamloops, like I know that guy's yard soil isn't perfect. And that single tree probably puts out like 500 pounds of acorns. It doesn't get fertilized, doesn't get watered. Right? It's in an urban jungle, right? It's not like in some complex, well, it is a complex ecosystem, but like, it's not perfect for that. Like, and that's totally okay. And so it's like, yeah, to make things perfect is great, but also to see what adapts and does well and thrives, and not just to hold yourself to a standard is pretty important. I feel like we keep saying the same stuff. So yeah, if anybody else needs snacks and stuff, let's get into the field so we can just talk about plants. If you guys are into it, yeah. Okay, we got everybody? Okay, so we'll kind of talk about how this is going to flow. Just because there's so many of us and my farm is so damn tight, like I can barely get wheelbarrows in a lot of these rows. Definitely feel free to like look around, be mindful of where you step. I'll try to point plants out. I'm like gonna go dive into there. Don't follow me into there. Just kind of observe from here. This one's probably easier to walk in if you need to, but if you guys want to hang out after the event or whatever and kind of poke around some of the plants, feel free to. But I'm going to walk over there and just start pointing out plants. And yeah, feel free to ask questions, but I'll try to cover as much as I can. I certainly won't be able to cover all of it. But yeah, so this is the food forest that I always wanted to be planting. And what happened, I was growing all these medicinal herbs. They were getting overrun by grass. That was in a different part of the farm. And so I decided to just I bought some silage tarp. It was a big investment that first couple years. and I took the tarp and blacked this whole area out, killed the grass for a year, pulled it off. I was just talking to Nadine about it. I added a bunch of bokashi and biochar and hand dug all the beds, and then covered that all with cardboard and wood chips. And then in the spot where the herbs were being taken over, I dug the roots up, so all root division stuff. A lot of these plants were things I started from seed. Like this whole skullcap patch came from like 3 plants that germinated. And then it's in the mint family, so they spread rhizomatically, which is going to get us into talking about kind of the different layers of the food forest. And so this is our ground cover, our herbaceous layer. We could talk about the rhizomatic layer, that's kind of down below, right? But yeah, so this is, there's no woody permanent plants. This is going to die to the ground every year. The way I use it in my business is I'll dig up probably half this bed, and after we cut off all the herbs and give them away to medicine makers and for our own personal use and friends and family, I'll dig up all the roots and then clean the soil off of them, just into a trash bag, and then a little clump of roots goes into a Ziploc when someone orders it. I kind of look at it as like, the candy bars at the checkout, like you came to my store for trees and then you saw some skullcap at the checkout and you're like, oh, why not? Throw it in. But the idea and like the way I would tell people to get, a big patch like this started is start with a small patch, make sure it's weed free, spread your rhizomes in the top area, like top layer. You don't need to dig them down deep, but then mulch over that and they're going to shoot up. And the first year it's not going to look like much. They're just going to kind of piddle along and almost get overcome by weeds, and you just weed them out. And then year 2, they're going to spread. And then by year 3, like this arnica has just taken over. Like I barely have to weed this thing. The amount of roots, I mean, we could start a 500-acre skullcap farm from just this 10-foot patch. So on your homesteads or your farms, making your own micro nursery so that you can propagate out. And then, if you do a companion planting with a bunch of fruit and nut trees that you plant and you want some skullcap around the drip line, then you can come into your own personal stash of your skullcap roots and you dig up a clump and then you have it. So that's kind of what I look about these ground cover herbaceous plants. They're medicinal. They are like a living mulch, right? They're great for pollinators. You're going to see a bunch of bees in here. And so this is true for skullcap or arnica or bugleweed. There's sneezewort back there. We have something called Chinese artichoke, which produces this little tuber. It's another mint family relative. So there's so much you can get into with this. As we start moving up into the layers of the food forest, there's going to be things like, raspberries, right? So like a vining shrub. And so we're into this small shrub layer. And as much as I want this place for beauty and for pollination, I got to think about what it's giving to the business, And so what I didn't have money for 5 years ago was buying fancy plants from nurseries so that I could get them established, so that they get big enough so I can take cuttings. Then I can tell you this is a titania black currant, right? Or a harvest moon sea buckthorn. So I have started doing that over the last couple of years and plugging them in. So you guys are seeing this at kind of this stage in its succession. And eventually this sour cherry is going to be one of the tallest species in here. And then I'll be able to cut it back and get a couple hundred cuttings from this sour cherry and its cousin over there. Same goes for the aronia berries on this back fence. The grape, trellising out. Those grapes came from, a friend in Argenta, whereas I bought the fancy grapes and we're getting those established so I can sell you a Jupiter grape. And that goes for your own property, your farmstead, whatever you're trying to do with it, to just establish your own mother plants so that you can get cuttings from them in the future, or root clumps or seeds. To have that concentrated patch is really beneficial. The person I learned a lot of this stuff from, I got a chance to work under him for a month and just learned a lot through his videos. His name is Michael Pilarski. He runs Friends of the Trees Botanicals in Washington State. And this dude's a legend. Like, I've never seen anybody work harder. And I'm not saying because he's in his 70s and he does all this stuff by hand. And the diversity, it makes this look like nothing. I mean, the diversity that this guy has incredible. So check out Friends of the Trees Botanicals. You'll see what this medicinal agroforestry type stuff looks like, and it's all temperate based. So it's it's not just tropical plants. It's for here. And he's the one who is just heavy mulch. Lots of close canopy. We don't want bare soil ever. We want lots of diversity, but usable diversity, right? So I have like a lot of block plantings. It's not just patches of skullcap. There's a block of skullcap, a block arnica, a patch of lobelia, and then you have your difference in how it's going to play out height-wise. So that you have your ground covers, you have your shrub layers, you have your taller tree species. If I were to have a chestnut over here, that's going to be your kind of climax species over time, where it's, maybe the hascap bush doesn't make it in year 15 because the chestnut's gotten so big, but we got berries from it for the first 15 years as it phased itself out. So when we make food forest, it's not like we're getting to a goal, right? Like it's that we're kind of cycling through these succession periods. And so, yes, we want the longer lived tree species to kind of dominate, but eventually those will come down too. And we'll go back to, the pioneer plants and that initial succession phase. So we all want like the pretty large treed orchard, but it starts kind of that ground level. And so you work up over time. And this has only been here for 3.5 years, this is going into its 4th year. So stuff grows quickly, and I certainly could have gotten it here quicker if I'd known some things. So hopefully you're encouraged to kind of go for it. In a lot of things, there's enough, different medicines for this entire community out of here. I was always kind of like, all right, well, how much am I growing vegetable-wise on a small, plot with hand tools? And you can grow a lot of food, but you can grow an incredible amount of medicine in a small place. So other plants to point out, we have our yarrow patches. This is astragalus, which fixes nitrogen but makes this lovely medicinal root. These are daylilies, so there's edible tubers that come out of these. Marshmallow, down below me, you can't see it, but there's a schizandra vine that's going to start going. The bees are going nuts on the wood betony. We make it over this way. These white flowers are trellising up something called groundnuts. Groundnuts are an edible tuber, and they're like a vining plant. They're kind of riparian based, so it's kind of nice to have this multiple function where they can crawl up the bone set. In the fall, I'll basically cut all the bone set down. We're gonna dig this bed entirely up and get all the roots out of it. I'll be able to sell the roots, as nursery stock, and then I'll replant it again next year, and we'll do it all over again. Eventually, the larger woody plants are going to kind of shadow out a lot of the stuff that you're seeing now, but we'll move on to the next section and go from there. So feel free to walk in through here when we're kind of on some downtime. Just be careful where you step, and this is kind of like the medicinal hotspot. And if you guys look behind you, all of that stuff got planted this year. And so I can kind of key out a couple of the plants in here that are worth talking about. So this is Myoga ginger, which, it's not actually related to ginger. It just has a ginger aromatic root. These are hascaps. If you guys have heard about hascaps, they're the new hot thing in Canada, right? So everybody's starting to get into them. And it's actually kind of cool because these won't even grow in a place like Florida. They need those cooling days to actually produce. So, we always think about that we have such a tough climate up here, but there's definitely a lot of species specific things that only grow up here. So you kind of lean into that. We're going to be changing our farming and what we farm based on that. So we're, place-based foods, and that will translate to diets and stuff too. So there's tons of things in here. We're not going to name them all. Hopefully they're on the website. And this is me just kind of wanting all of it. That is switchgrass, because that's switchgrass and that's sweetgrass. This is kind of the groundnut if it's not on the trellis. And let's see if I can dig one up to give you guys an example. They are just forming their roots right now, so They're just getting big, but they send out these long runners and stuff, and then they'll form the roots on the end of them. It's kind of not the time. It happens in the fall.
Is it groundnut?
Groundnuts, Apios americana. Yeah, staple food for indigenous people back in like the East Coast side of things.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, totally. And that's what you find out is like all of these where they're not just wild plants, but they've been bred, right?
And this ginger?
Yeah,
Where did it come from?
Myoga ginger. That stuff came from a nursery on the east. I think it was Norton Naturals. I forget which.
It's not something that's an indigenous, right?
Nope. No, I mean, I'm all about native plants, but if you really look at, there's so much diversity around the world, and maintaining native ecosystems is very important, and making sure the spread of invasives and, outcompeting natives is an important thing. But, walnuts aren't going to just march into our forest and start taking over. I mean, wouldn't that be kind of cool, at least on the edges? But I think there's a lot of nuance when it comes to that. So plant responsibly, but also there's been so much development done, cultural heritage that we can pull on and share, that I think it's important to find the appropriate plants, even if they're not from.
Why I asked about because there is ginger in the woods here.
Yeah, that's.
I don't know how you could.
No, that's the Serum canadense, and that stuff's a whole medicinal thing that it's not. Yeah, it's its own thing, but yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, we're gonna get right over to them. Those are like damn near the easiest things to propagate. They take over, man. So yeah, you got to be careful. I didn't know that. I thought goji berry was like some special tropical thing from China, and no, it turns out, behind Oso Negro in Nelson, there's massive bush, right? All the cuttings you could ever want. So yeah, that's a good one. All right, let's go over to the main field. So this is kind of the main planting, and before we start listing off things, I kind of wanted to feature this little spot, just because these trees are special to me. I got to actually dig them up this year, or else this giant sequoia is going to really live up to its name.
It's a sequoia.
Yeah, this is a cedar of Lebanon from New Mexico. This is a bald cypress, and these were given to me by Tom Zepp up in, he's from Argenta, and I'll call him my tree mentor. But I just wanted to have like one part, because I was so worried about being productive, right, and making money doing this, making this a career. And so this is kind of, I don't know, this is like my little like reminder to just like, these things they're just beautiful, and that like we don't have to make money off of every part of our land.
I have one of those that I planted 40 years ago.
Yeah.
So you can imagine how tall it is.
Yeah, there's one actually right next door that it's probably about the same age.
Same place.
Oh, did they? Yeah.
Well, they planted a few species like that at the nursery. And
sure.
Japanese larch.
Yeah.
One of those.
Yeah.
A few other odd things.
Beautiful.
40 years of growth. Wow.
Yeah.
It's towering over my house.
Yeah.
Is that the Japanese larch there? And the little ones?
No.
No.
This one again?
Yeah, what is that?
This is cedar of Lebanon.
Cedar.
Yeah. So I'm such a practical, like if it doesn't produce food or clothing or shelter, get it out of here. Yeah, it's nice, and there's inherent value to like the intrinsic value of beauty, and so yeah, this is a musclewood, a carpinus, and it's gonna just have the prettiest leaf color. So this is like part of myself that I'm kind of leaning into. Right, we'll get all the practical stuff, don't worry. But to have that kind of space for that aesthetic beauty, I think goes a long way. So yeah, anyways, I wanted to start with that. We're gonna do this in like 3 parts. Same deal, kind of line up in the sawdust pathway, and I'm gonna go stand out and point at things. So let's go. Yeah.
Is that an unusual pine?
Yeah, that's an Armandi pine. It's one of the first things I germinated. Those things are 5 years old. Yeah, they're neat looking. They take forever to grow. Not a practical thing for me as a nursery, but.
How old do these plants grow? Do you know the age of like the pine there?
Yeah, about 4 years. Yeah.
No, to grow up, but how old do they live?
Oh, I mean, all different. I'd have to look that one up.
Yeah, just because it's interesting to know, because everything here grows within about 100 years.
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of the oaks, I mean, chestnuts can live for hundreds of years, but like, whereas like a hascap bush is going to peter out after probably 30, 40 years. I mean, depending, right? Same with the apple trees, right? Like there are, heritage apple trees that'll be 100 years, but
yeah, we've got it somewhere around.
Yeah, it's nothing like the oak trees though that are like just getting warmed up at year 200.
Do you have to graft those apple trees?
These ones are grafted. We do stuff from seed, where I get like the Antonovka seed, and it's a Russian.
What's the stock that you use for the grafting on?
It depends. It's
On
either
apples?
stuff. Yeah, it depends. Yeah, I'll do Bud 111. We grow, seedlings out ourselves and graft onto those sometimes. So, yeah, like the plums are myrobalan often. It all varies.
A lot of people used, the small apples, crab apple.
Sure.
Roots or whatever, something like that.
Yeah. So let's go over here.
Grow natively.
And we can start talking about different species.
Do you have any Antonovka in fruit?
Nope. I can't wait to see one though. Yeah, for sure. Okay, yeah. So yeah, if you don't mind lining it up here, I'll kind of just go out into the field. We're gonna talk a lot about mulberries. I really like mulberries. They're good for so many different things. So these are 2-year-old mulberries. These ones are from that. Careful. They protect themselves. Where's Kate? These are seedlings from Creston.
Nice.
So yeah, these are from our area, and the mulberries are good for a lot of people. Think about the big, beautiful, delicious berries, the long fruiting season. So they're so prolific they can start fruiting at the end of June, and that can last. I saw at Hillary Shell's place, they were fruiting in October. So to have a fruit tree that throws down for like 90 days is incredible, right? Because like when the plum harvest is on, you got to get it that week, or else the bears are showing up. And so mulberries are really good for that. It's a long harvest window. The fruits are very nutritionally dense. Some stuff, especially the people who are interested in animal production, the leaves are really palatable. So making or growing your own hay, tree hay, is done with mulberries. This is why this is the oldest cultivated crop in the world, and not just like tree crop, but of any crop. The Chinese were growing mulberries, I think 5,000 plus BC, and that was for silk production. That's how silk is made. It's on mulberry trees. In the 1700s, I think it was the King of England mandated that mulberries be grown in the New World so that they could have their own silk industry. That's why the native red mulberry is kind of gonzo, is because they hybridize really easily. So all of those genetic populations kind of mixed. And now when people are like, well, I want the black mulberry, it's like, well, black mulberries are from Europe. What you're talking about is a Morris alba, the white mulberry hybrid. And don't worry, it doesn't have to be a black mulberry by name to have black fruit. So that's why I call it on the website now black fruited mulberry, because these are technically white mulberries or white mulberry hybrids. You can see some raspberries over here.
What's tree hay?
Yeah, tree hay. I mean, so basically what you'd do is you would plant. It's a good question. I should expand on that. You could do this with a couple different types of trees. We'll use mulberry as the example right now. I would plant mulberries at like 3 to 5 foot intervals. So very, very dense. And you're basically coppicing your trees in the middle of the growing season. So if you can get, depending on your climate, 2 cuttings a year. So, they leaf out, they vegetate through June, July, and then you're hacking branches, really coppicing.
Using it as mulch.
Well, like stacking it up and feeding it to your animals, right? Yeah, for the chop and drop that you're talking about, elderberries.
Okay.
Yeah, and like that elderberry that's behind Eris right there, that thing was 6 inches tall in May, right? I cut it to the ground.
What kind of elderberry is it?
That is, I think that's the Marge. So that is a Canadensis nigra hybrid. That thing grows like
It's not fruiting?
It's got fruits on it for sure.
Would it fruit more if you coppice it?
It depends. Some elderberries throw their fruit out on second year wood.
Okay.
Certainly pruning and coppicing plants stimulates growth.
Yeah.
It's not like, I think people who are afraid to touch their plants kind of miss out on a lot. it's nice to shape it. And then, there's the exact opposite philosophy, the one straw guy talking about just letting things grow naturally. Yeah, to each their own, right? But anyways, to conclude on tree hay, it would be tight, dense spacing. You'd be coppicing through the season 1 or 2 times and stacking that up and feeding it to for your animals and livestock.
The mulberries, they get quite big.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. Like some of those trees in Creston are going 40 to 50 feet, I'd say. But I think 20 to 30 is pretty reasonable for the first.
Produce fruit on like 10 or 15.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I get cuttings from the Mount Sentinel farm there, and they have a mulberry that I think is only 10 years old, and it's maybe 15 feet tall, and man, it's loaded with berries. Unbelievable.
They produce on second year wood?
I mean, they won't produce for the first 4 or 5 years, but then at that point, yeah, they'll vegetate, that'll become lignified, and then it'll fruit on that lignified wood the following year. Yeah, yeah. So to cover more crops, I'll have samples of these. Yeah.
Mulberry too. I have one, and it started fruiting this year. It's kind of a young tree, like 4 or 5 years. But all the fruits kind of dry out right away and didn't develop. I was wondering.
And it's a mulberry, you said?
On a mulberry, yeah, white Russian, I think.
Sure.
That from Edmonton.
Yeah.
3 times.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it could be an example like that one doesn't work here. It could be a nutrient deficiency. It could just be kind of some weird growing. You said it did that this year?
Well, it did, like it was fruiting, and it was all those flowers. Well, I don't know if you call them flowers, but you could see those little grapes kind of.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, we're gonna have some fruits, and then everything kind of dry out right on the tree. And
yeah, I mean, a tree is thinking about its entire lifespan.
Right.
So it's this balance between like I need to put energy into root production or vegetative growth or reproduction.
So maybe next year it's gonna go.
Yeah, it could have gotten, for some reason, it made a decision to abort all those fruits because it didn't want to spend the energy on them. And another thing to point out, mulberries don't need to be cross-pollinated. If it's just, and it's the monoecious versus dioecious, so the sex is either in one house or 2 houses. In mulberry's case, it's kind of complicated because the sex can be in 2 houses, so dioecious, but also they can have both on the same tree. So you don't need a male to fertilize a female to produce fruit, but you won't have seed in the fruit, and some of the protein content that you get out of mulberry fruit comes from that seed content. Like one fruit has, 10 or 12 seeds in it. That's why they're so good for chickens. So, all the ones I've ever harvested always seem to have seeds in it, even if there's no apparent male around. That just means they, chose to have both on the same tree.
It's self-pollinating.
Yes, exactly. They don't need, it doesn't matter. The females are going to pick the fruit. Yep.
What about the hascaps?
Yeah. We can talk about those next. So yeah, hascaps do need pretty complex pollinators, like pollination dynamics. So they can't self-pollinate. And then when their flowers are open and receptive to a different variety's pollen, those windows overlap differently. So you just need different varieties that are compatible. There's fancy charts that talk about that. Look it up. It's kind of not worth really getting into the weeds on that one. But whereas the hardy kiwis that are on the other side of these hascap rows, these do need a male and a female. So, you'll have one male for say 4 or 5 female vines. And that would be a lot because one of these vines at full maturity can produce 100 pounds of fruit. And yeah, they're quite aggressive. They don't look like much now. These are just 1-year-old cuttings, but they can take, one vine can span 40 feet down a trellis. So yeah, they're quite prolific once they get going.
You don't have one that's fruiting?
Not here. Nope. I got some gummy berries to share with you guys, aronias and sea buckthorn. Try to get some weird berries for you guys to sample.
What are these berries?
Yeah, those are the aronias. Feel free to pick one. Those aren't as ripe as the ones I got over by the table for you. So,
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
If you were to use a vining plant to protect the south side of a house,
sure,
keep it cool,
yeah,
also lose its leaves and open it up for
right,
winter, what would you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, kiwi would be great for that. Yeah. I'm trying to think. Yeah, so it's like kiwis, grapes, hops are all kind of the vining species that we focus on. You know, you could do passion flower, maypop would be another one, and schizandra is another vining, medicinal edible type. Yeah, there's what's the ornamental wisteria or something. Those are boring. There's enough.
Need more than one kiwi to pollinate?
Yes. So you need one male present, and then that can do 4 to 5 females, or at least in that kind of little area.
When you sell them, you know their sex?
Yes, you got it. Or I don't, and I just say they're seedlings and good luck. And that's fine too, right? At least you got to know what you're getting. So yeah, all of this stuff though is clonal propagation. If you guys heard the misters going off in that shady greenhouse, it's because I'm getting these cuttings rooted now that are going to come into the field next year. So all of these were in that greenhouse last year, in these little propagation beds. We can stick our head in that if we have enough time, kind of on the way out. Yeah, it's all a work in progress.
So all this will get dug this fall?
Yeah, nothing stays here for more than the year.
Where do you store it?
In that shipping container.
Okay. And
Yeah.
refrigerated?
Yes.
Wow.
So in the fall, you're gonna pull everything out.
Yeah.
In the fridge.
Yeah.
Sell it in the spring.
Yeah,
And
totally.
What about that? Are you gonna rototill or is just?
No, I mean when we harvest with the broad fork and digging like the nursery shovels. And just digging up the bed. I mean, it's nice because it incorporates all the, wood chips and stuff that isn't worked in. I mean, this field looks like a bomb went off, right? Like, and it's November, it's cold and it's rainy. The crazy thing you learn about as in the bare root world, and like maybe why not as many people are doing this, is because some years we'll have such a warm October, and I can't dig anything until they go dormant, right? Or at least until the leaves are yellowed and start going. So I'm sitting here and like the opposite of other farmers, I'm like, come on, frost, let's go. These guys need to go to sleep. I need to harvest these before, a foot of snow falls in the Kootenays. And yeah, a couple years back, what ended up happening was a record-breaking warm October. They wouldn't go to sleep. Our first frost wasn't until November. That was a disaster for me because they just weren't going to sleep. I was like, oh my God, what's going to happen if it gets cold? And then it was like one of the earliest cold snaps. It got, it didn't get above 0 for like the rest of November, and the ground was frozen, and I'm just sitting there with no mentorship in this space being like, am I screwed? And it turns out you can harvest these things with the ground frozen a couple inches. Wow. You just gotta be really gentle and delicate, but it was a learning process. It definitely made it a lot more stressful, but I mean, even now, just, going into the 6th year, like I remember getting in August and kind of looking at these guys being like, you're not big enough, and kind of freaking out. And the amount of growth that happens over the next 45 days is incredible. Like I have nothing to worry about because I have that experience to tap into. So it's nice. It's kind of it takes my anxiety level down.
You have to heat that shipping container?
Yeah, the storage is basically above 0 and below 5. So it's basically just heating it between November.
Insulated?
Oh, it's spray foamed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, the HVAC system in there. And so basically in March, we kind of shift into cooling it. Cause yeah, and like it can get warm in there in the middle of the day. And so, yeah, it's cooled through the end of April. And then, I'll start sending out orders to people on the coast, like on the island in like the first week of March. Whereas like people in Manitoba are like, do not send me anything until the end of April, first week of May. So that's kind of our range is like a 2-month window. And I want to keep the plants dormant so that they're ready to just kind of explode and go hard as soon as they get planted. So
is that the point of harvesting in fall and keeping them in the container, because then they're not in the soil and outside to pick up on like the change in season? Is the whole point so that they're guaranteed to be dormant?
Yes.